Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. We're back for another week of What Women Want Talk Radio. Thank you for joining us for our show tonight, Mental Health in Fashion. And I'm here with my co-host, Kristen West. Drum roll, Kristen.
Hello.
I was like, is she there? Happy Black Panther week, by the way. My daughter is a Marvel nut, and I've seen the movie twice already. I loved it. So I just wanted to say happy Black Panther week. We are in the middle also of Fashion Week around the world. If you aren't aware, we just finished up in London. The week before that was New York City, and now it has moved to Milan, then Paris. How glamorous. With models, designers, photographers, makeup artists, and the like creating our future in fashion. But as star-studded as the industry seems, there is also a dark side to it. I happen to know firsthand from my runway modeling days. And we're going to reveal some of that on the show tonight, as well as what we can do about it. What Women Want has reached over 1 million downloads. Yay! Since we first hit the airwaves, and between LATalkRadio.com's archives, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and all over social media all the time, you can find us everywhere. So we are seeking sponsors for our show, because if we're everywhere, then your company or service will be also. So email us for a complete deck through our website, whatwomenwantradio.com, and someone from our team will get right back to you. Go ahead and lock in that rate before we get to the next report. I'm waiting for it from Sam, and our numbers, I'm sure, are going to go up again. whatwomenwantradio.com. We do have the most amazing guests, from celebrities in the entertainment world and fashion world to world-class experts in their fields. We cover it all with our relevant lifestyle topics that make you think, conversation that feeds our mind and energizes our spirit. Okay, fashion, dressing up, feeling confident, expressing ourselves through what we wear. It can all be very empowering, right? Even liberating at times. But what about when all of that is a facade? In the fashion industry, very often models don't feel as beautiful on the inside than they do on the outside. So, Kristen, I was really shocked when I saw the amount of models who have suffered from depression and anxiety, leading so many times to suicide even.
It is shocking, and it's shocking, and it's painful to see what people put themselves through to have this career in fashion. And I feel for them, because, you know, being in entertainment, we have much the same pressures as well to look and act and appear a certain way, which is why I'm so glad that we have Dr. Nina coming on and Tyron Barrington coming on to really elucidate how we can stem this problem that so many people suffer from with their image.
That's right. And, you know, it's an ongoing problem, and it's just not enough awareness. We're not bringing enough awareness to the table, right? So Tyron is definitely starting that momentum by doing what he's doing with Mife. We're going to find out about the books that he's writing and the decades that he's been in the industry, and a lot of the stories, you know, that he has, and really teaching us about what this whole, you know, other side of the industry is. So, and, you know, I was in that industry too. I was a high fashion model with Ford New York. And for years, I was traveling around the world, living in all sorts of places where I didn't know the language, and I didn't know anyone in the country that I was assigned to next, you know, or even when I was just jumping on the plane at the last minute and going to places like Morocco and Ivory Coast. And it can be really scary. And I can't speak for the, you know, the designers in the industry, but I do know there have been issues with depression and anxiety, you know, with them also in the press. So it became very public. So as I mentioned before, I was a high fashion model, and so this is a very exciting show for me. And after that, I became a magazine editor, and then that led to me hosting and reporting for Better TV, City Buzz, and a few other shows for the past few years. And now I'm a regular contributor on NBC and Fox. And I founded the company What Women Want Networking 7 years ago. We're nationwide with several regional chapters and hosting our second annual conference in October. And I'm also the St. Martin's Press author and the mom of 13-year-old twin girls, which I don't know if they're getting into the modeling industry or not, but we will see. So, Kristen, tell us about your on-fire award-winning acting, award-winning producing, and award-winning screenwriting career. It's unbelievable.
It's a whirlwind of fun. I'm actually right now enjoying the fact that the Spirit Room is now on the film festival circuit. We're going to be booking more and more screenings of that film very soon, and it's already won a few awards. The Lich is in post-production, and of course now I'm doing my Up Live show 4 days a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. It's a global live streaming app, and we have thousands of people watching that show too, and I always talk about What Women Want Talk Radio when I'm on that show as well. So it is fun and exciting to be, working and doing all of that. And I'm excited to hear also what our guests are going to say, because often in entertainment we are in the business of image making just the same way that fashion people are. And I'm so excited to get Tyrone's opinion on all of this too.
And also, I know that you spoke with Dr. Nina before on a similar topic. So, that is something that I want to also, talk about what you guys said and how that came about. And I just want to say, as from being a former high fashion model myself, and like I said, going to many countries where I didn't know anyone or the language and all that, kind of curious to know if this industry is creating models. Is it a catalyst for depression, or is it that the girls or and the boys too have this anxiety or depression already? Is what is it? Which way is it? So we're going to bring on Tyron Barrington so we can talk about that. And Tyron is a former top model agent, and now he's a fashion producer and casting director. He's casted or produced for clients such as Avon, Revlon, Levi's, Target, L'Oreal, and Laura Mercier, to name a few. And he's worked recently with celebrities such as Kylie Jenner, Vanessa Hudgens, Lucy Hale, Ashley Green, Lauren Conrad. This list is endless. It just keeps going on and on. Kat Graham, Jamie Chung. He's the author of 2 books, The Lord is My Agent and He Only Takes 10%, as well as Bearing Souls in Fashion, both available on Amazon.com. He's also the president of MIFE and MIFE Talks Events, a nonprofit organization that mentors teens and young adults entering the fashion and entertainment industry. Well needed, as well as bringing awareness to issues such as FGM, female genital mutilation, mental health, and fashion. He's been featured on ABC Nightline, as well as the New York Post and the Daily News, as well as What Women Want Talk Radio. He's been on the show before, and numerous television series, including I Can Make You a Supermodel in Holland and the United Kingdom. Welcome back to What Women Want, Tyron.
Oh, thank you so much, Judy, for having me again on the show. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's our pleasure, and it's such an important issue that you're bringing awareness to. I had the honor of being on a panel that you put together in New York City at Neuhaus, and we were talking with the audience and with the experts there, and it just seems like every time you tell a story of like the behind the scenes story in the industry, that people are seriously shocked and didn't realize how rampant it really is, depression, anxiety disorders in this industry.
Right. It's a very, very common thing, and I think one of the main causes is that there's a thing, basically win at all cost. And I think that's the effect that I think most agents are pressured to win at all cost. And not only the agents, you have the models who would basically go at all lengths to succeed in the industry. And I think that's based on the society that we live in, where you should be number one in everything, or you should succeed at whatever you put your hands at. And there's no second place or third place. It always have to be first place. So in the end, people go to extreme lengths to achieve whatever. And then later on, it really, I think, even though it compromised the integrity of who they are, and in the end, most times, that's when they realize, was it really worth it? And I think that's where the pain comes in later on.
Exactly. Well, you know what I was reading an article for the WashingtonPost.com that a model wrote herself. I've read several of these over the past, recently. And she was saying that, she was having trouble giving the photographer what he wanted on set. And he took her into the hallway and he started saying, come on, snap out of it. And what are you doing? What happened to you? And, you're not being happy enough and this and that. And you're not emoting. And she was worried that a fashion director was going to walk by or someone from another studio and see her crying there. And then basically in her perspective, she was whipped back onto the set with the makeup artist, throwing Visine in her eyes and trying to touch up her makeup and really pushing her to give something that she wasn't feeling. And I do think that this is the start of it. Now, you have some stories about models, traveling with you, right, that were severely depressed, and that, that's going to an extreme, but I think it's more common than we realize, no?
Right. I think one of the things, and it's strange enough because my first manuscript is strange. I was cleaning out my closet and found the manuscript for my first book, and interestingly enough, this was on Friday, and I flipped page of the manuscript. I was about to throw it away, and I flipped through the whole pages, and one page I stuck on, it talked about addiction, and my assistant was looking at it and we were like, isn't that weird that the page that I flipped on was talking about addiction, and the chapter said, start with, addiction is a big problem in our society, especially in entertainment and fashion, which is why I had a hard time working with models under the age of 16. And I think that's where sometimes the cause of a lot of the issues are. When you take a child, young adult, a teen, or, a child who's under the age of 16, and you put them into an adult situation, trying to get them to be an adult, then inevitably a lot of things are going to happen, and things that are not pleasant, not really great. And you were referring to, there's a Swedish model I worked with, and at the age of 15, she was on the contract with a big designer brand from Italy, one of the most famous brands in the world. And it's every model's dream to have an exclusive contract. And here was this 15-year-old girl, and she had this exclusive contract, massive contract, big money and everything.
Like hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yeah. 6 figures. And at 15 years old, she was a very, very small town in Sweden, not even in the center of Sweden, but a small island off of Sweden, and being thrust in the limelight there. And then all of a sudden you had situations where, because she was underage, one of the things I always did was to try and chaperone the models myself, because I knew in places like Italy, which was Milan was always one place I always hated to work, and I would have to go there every season for the shows of the models, especially the ones on the age, and I hated sending the models there, but it was part of the system during the collection season that the girls would go New York, Milan, Paris. Those were the 3 key ones, and then also London, but the 3 key ones were New York, Milan, and Paris. And so for her, I made sure I went with her during that season. Sometimes we'd go with her there, but one of the things I would see, and especially the reason why I said Milan was because you always had these playboys who would hang out around the model agencies. And these were older guys, and they were hanging out at the agencies, and they knew who were new in town, and they would literally, go after the young girls.
I got asked many times when I lived in Milan as a model to go on somebody's yacht to, for a few days, and we'll pay you this, even we'll pay you this amount of money. Oh, you don't have to do anything, and come on, let's go. I mean, it's just such an incredibly dangerous situation.
Yeah, And that was one place I truly hated to even send models to go to work, or especially young girls.
But
That
back when
was
you were an agent,
one
unfortunately, that was the place to go. That was it. Milan was it.
place, yeah. It was the place that the models had to go, and but you always feared for the models. Now, there was the model when she was in Paris. Paris was always a city I do enjoy going to, because there was always a creative feel there. You didn't really feel that pressure. There was also that thing going on there, but you didn't feel it as heavy as in Milan. But in Paris, it was always me and this young girl will go stay in the same hotel, different rooms, that we stay in the same hotel. I was more like the father, father hen, protecting her and stuff. They'd go on the castings with her, interpret what the clients want her to do and stuff there. My French wasn't perfect at that time, still isn't, but I live between there and the United States, but it was easy for me to negotiate and book her contracts or deals and stuff for her appearances and stuff there. But in Milan, we had just finished I think she just finished doing Chanel or something like that. It was during the couture, and we had heard this from many designers. And there's a 15-year-old girl. She just turned 16. She had a contract when she was 15, and now she just turned 16. And she was very shy, stuff there. But during the shows, you'd hear some of the designers says, "Oh, her hips are too wide." She was like a 35 and a half, nearly 36-inch hips, and they were just very small on top, but just the hip was like a 35 and a half, 36 inches, and they would literally say it in such a degrading way in front of her that you would just feel the pain of when they made those remarks, like, "Oh, too big on the hips" and stuff there. But what I used to do is just say to her, "Okay, it's their loss. Let's move on. If they don't book you, let's move on there."
But not everyone had an agent like you either, too.
No, I think there were some others out there, but some were just more concerned. As I said, win at all cost. A lot of agents didn't care. They just wanted to get the job for their model and to, prove their boss that they were successful. For me, it was different because I saw the models as like my little brothers and sisters. I had little brothers and sisters, so I always felt that, if it was one of my brothers or sisters or nieces or nephews, I would want someone to protect them. So that's how I would view these kids, and I used to call them my kids. It's like a step parent, these kids here, and I always felt that the parents gave us the models, their kids, to be responsible for them for the time that we're working with them, so it was my responsibility to take care of them. Well, in this case, after we'd finished that show, I think it was a Chanel, I'm pretty sure it was Chanel, she just finished, and next thing you know, we had to do another big designer show the following day, and so we went back to the hotel, we were relaxed and everything. And I went to my room, and next thing you know, she called and she says, "Tyron, can I come and see you?" And I said, "Sure, come on." She came over to the room, and when she walked in, and it was the most sad thing I'd ever seen, both hands were cut up.
Oh, my God.
She had taken a razor blade and started slicing up her hands on both sides, both left and right sides of her hands there. And tears were just coming down her face, and she just says, "I can't do it anymore. I feel very ugly.
Oh.
I can't do it." My heart just broke right there and then, and I just said, "Okay, stop. Everything stop right now.
Oh, my gosh.
You're going home. We're stopping this right now. This is not worth it." And so what I did, she had the next day the big designer show, but what I did, I canceled it. I called her mom immediately in Sweden, and I said, "Listen, either I'm going to take her back to Sweden or you have to come and get her. But this has to stop right now, and we need for her to get help." And luckily her mom came for her, and but then I also got for her to meet with a psychiatrist, psychologist, to discuss what was going on, but also immediately had to stop
good for you.
The whole thing totally.
Well, good for you for intervening in that. That is just awful, Tyrone. And I mean, I think people don't understand that level of pressure. An inch and a half on a hip causes a girl to do such self-harm. And I'm glad that you brought up the designers, too, because I think we are kind of focused on the models because we see them, but we also don't see the struggles of the designers. And
of course.
It's true that... Is it true that the speed of the internet and the pace of business and the fashion business has actually gone up because of the internet? There's a lot of designers complaining.
Totally.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I tell you what happened. About 3 years ago, I commissioned a study on mental health and fashion. About 3 years ago, from two people who worked at worked in London at Nick H. Jones and L. Francis Day, Arts Council of England. And L worked with, issues dealing with mental health and stuff like that. And I said to him, could you do me a favor? Because after Alexander McQueen, when Alexander McQueen first came to the United States, I gave him a whole series of models. And that was my first time meeting them, because after the show, I was invited to the show in New York, and they said to me, they introduced him to me and said they wanted him to meet me because I'd given him all these top new models. But one other thing, he became one of my favorite designers over the years. But when you look at what happened to Alexander McQueen, the level of demands that are being made on these designers today, it's got to the point because the insatiable desire for the public to want something new now, they're not willing to wait. And then you have stores like H&M and Zara's. What they're doing, they're churning out these things every month, something new. So the designers are now forced to come up with something quicker, faster, and better, because the quick stores like H&M and all these stores are copying the stuff, or basically they're bringing out similar stuff immediately. So the designers are having it harder, and you see so many designers. You've got Alexander McQueen, but look at what happened with John Galliano when he had that meltdown. Some people say, because he made anti-Semitism statements and stuff, but it was the amount of collections he had to do in each season. I mean, not to make any excuses for what he said.
Right.
Let's not get this wrong. What he said was wrong. I'm saying the demand got so bad that he was drinking heavily and doing whatever else that he was doing.
I just want to interject here. I'm sorry, Tyron. For the listeners that don't know, Alexander McQueen did commit suicide at the age of 40.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure, because not everyone may realize what happened there. So keep going.
Right. And then you also had was the lady that was the one who inspired him. She also committed suicide, and she was one of the great creative directors in the industry. You have so many. Look at Elren Scott, Mick Jagger's ex. She committed suicide. These are things that are going on in the industry that people, they don't talk about these things. Look at the model who jumped off the building, the Russian model, jumped out of the apartment building a couple of years ago, killed herself. Look at the male model who 2 years ago in Times Square stripped naked and started running up and down there, that lost it for a moment. The business has gotten so
like a pressure cooker.
Unregulated. It's like a pressure cooker, because what's happened now, I tell you what's happened. You have all these agencies, and all the agencies, the designers, you have a factor that's going on right now. You have casting directors who have, some egos have gotten out of bounds, and they go to the agencies and said, I want an exclusive on this girl for this designer. It may not be a top designer, but because they do the castings for one top designer, they've got maybe 3 so-so designers, so they demand exclusive for all 4 designers and block that model from working with another casting director who may have 2 or 3 other top designers. So you have these egos fighting each other. Then the designers are saying, oh, I want someone new this season. So you have the designers and the casting directors totally out of whack, all fighting for their egos to say who had the better models and all that sort of stuff there. Before, used to have a group of casting directors and designers. Everybody worked with everyone.
Right.
You know, you work with Calvin Klein, you work with Donna Karan, everybody worked with each other unless the model was under an exclusive contract, then you know that model only worked for that designer. But otherwise, everybody worked with everybody.
Well, what's great is...
Today, it's...
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, Tyron. What's great is you're actually doing something about it with your organization. You have a nonprofit organization. Is it...
Right.
I'm sorry, what is it called again?
It's called MIFE. In Spanish, it means my faith. It's mentoring in fashion and education, or ministry in fashion education. But it's about what we've been doing for years is bring awareness about issues in industry, from female genital mutilation. We brought this around in the early 1997, something like that. It was one of my models that I used to work with. She was a Revlon model, Vogue model, and found out she was always drinking every month, and then had a talk with her, found out that she was circumcised. She was a nomad from Somalia that was circumcised when she was about 10, 11 years old or 12. Held down, razor blades sliced and everything, stitched back up and everything. But every month, at that time of the month, was the hardest thing for her to do was to use the bathroom. The pain was so excruciating that when I heard the story, I never heard about female circumcision before. So what I did, I took the story, and Marie Claire did a huge piece on her. Then CNN did a piece on it, and next thing you know, it became a big thing. She was named one of Glamour magazine's top 10 Women of the Year, Amnesty International, and took her to the UN. She became a UN ambassador, and we got laws passed around the world in different countries banning female circumcision, because when immigrants come into each different country, they bring their traditions and their laws. So they pay people to do these circumcisions. So right in the United States, even though we've got Congress who has passed laws against it, it still happens today. You know, so all over the world now we've been able to pass laws, but people still do it. So these are things, and now we're focusing on mental health and fashion. But there's something else going to come. I mean, we've been part of different movements on women's rights for years. The rights of women, the rights of children and stuff there. So we've been talking about these things for many, many years. It's nothing new, but it's now it seems like, wow, we've been doing this for a long time, but it's something that's part of who we are. You know, it's something we are our own neighbors, we are our own brothers keepers. That's what it is.
And you have a book coming out, is that correct? Do you have a book coming out?
2 books. We have 2 books. The first one is called The Lord is My Agent, and He Only Takes 10%. That's just a brief bio of my journey. It has some of those stories in it. The second book just came out, and it's called Bearing Souls in Fashion. And it's more like a children's book for grown-ups. And it's about things falling down in life and getting back up and all that sort of stuff there. It's a bit of a funny, tongue-in-cheek stuff there. So that's basically what it is.
Well, I like the title of it, Bearing Souls. That's fascinating. Well, Tyron, I know we're fascinated by all the stories, and we're fascinated by all that you have done to empower women in fashion. I know our listeners are going to want to keep up with you online after the show. And Judy, we're just going to have him back again. Oh my goodness.
I know. Gosh, that went quick.
How do we find you online, and how do we buy your book?
Books are on Amazon, Amazon.com, Bearing Souls, and Souls is like a shoe soles, S-O-L-E-S, Bearing Souls in Fashion. It's a tongue-in-cheek thing. The Lord is My Agent, and He Only Takes 10%. It's also on Amazon. Or they can always contact me by email, Tyron, Tyron, at barringtonmgt.com. That's Tyron at barringtonmgt.com. Quite simple.
Well, thank you so much, Tyron, for coming on and being so candid, and for everything you're doing, really, in the fashion industry and helping and mentoring people. Absolutely. And I want to move on to Dr. Nina now, but I just wanted to, thank you from everyone and all the people that you've helped along the way over the decades, because I know you've been a constant source of support. So thank you again.
Bless you.
And now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin. She's actually right here with me in studio this evening. A very special treat. She's a psychoanalyst, author, and talk show host specializing in food, weight, and body image issues. She's an internationally recognized expert in the field of eating psychology. And in addition to her radio program, The Dr. Nina Show, which I've had the pleasure to be on here on LA Talk Radio, she also has an interview show on the Focus TV network. She's appeared on numerous shows, and most recently the Dr. Drew podcast. And her book, Food for Thought, is an Amazon bestseller. Welcome to the show, Dr. Nina.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on, especially on this topic, and I'm so glad that you're here to lend your expertise to this, because it is important, especially after we heard all of these very poignant, heartbreaking stories that Tyron was just, amazing enough to share with us, because I don't think we realize what goes on in fashion.
Yeah, I want to say there is hope, because a couple of years ago I got a call from a Wilhelmina agent in London, and she said, "Oh my God, one of my girls is too thin. I think she has an eating disorder. What do I do?" So I thought, wow, in addition to some of the other things that we're seeing in the media, like the Dove campaigns or health at any size, and seeing models of different sizes, it was really gratifying and wonderful that this agent at Wilhelmina would reach out to me. But
that is fantastic.
Yeah, I was super impressed. But what people in fashion are dealing with are the same things that people in the world are dealing with, and this idea of objectification is a real problem, I think, in our society. The idea that we are what we look like, and paying very little attention to the people we are, how we think, what we want, what we feel, what we do for others, how we are generative in the world, that becomes very secondary to what is the number on the scale.
It's so true. And I'm glad that you brought up the Wilhelmina agent actually reaching out to you, because I think sometimes we've been very challenged by recent events in our country. And sometimes we're conditioned as people not to want to meddle in the lives of others. And when someone's clearly showing signs of having a problem. And I wanted to ask you if you had advice, if you're a friend or a relative of someone you suspect has a mental health issue or an eating issue, at what point should you intervene with them?
I think as soon as you see it, because these behaviors are a communication. They're like a silent scream saying, "Help me, I'm suffering, something is wrong." Whether someone is losing a lot of weight, gaining a lot of weight, depressed, in our recently this awful, horrific case of the person who had posted on YouTube and talked to other people about how he wanted to be the biggest school shooter, in the world. When we often have this tendency to laugh it off or dismiss it or minimize it. So if you see something, say something. And you can couch it in the terms of, "Hey, I notice that you seem sad," or "I notice that you're making jokes about shooting people," or "I notice that you're whatever it is that you're seeing."
Right.
Say, is something, what's going on? Don't ask a question that they can answer yes or no. Right. Ask a question that they don't say, "Are you okay?" Because they're going to be like, "Fine, I'm fine," and then you're going to get nowhere. But if you say, "No, what's bothering you right now? It seems like you're really sad. What's going on with you? Talk to me," they're much more likely to answer.
I like that idea of the open-ended question, because a lot of people, my personal opinion is almost everybody is an actor, whether they know it or not, and you can fake being happy, you can fake being sad. And I like what you said about that these behaviors are really communication, because people just see, a little light bulb went off in my head just now, just sitting here with you talking about that, because people don't understand that behavior does communicate. And I also was interested in that comment that you made about Photoshop, because I actually read an article recently on designscene.net, and there was this this quote, and I'm just gonna read it, and I want your thoughts on this quote. The demand for almost superhuman perfection, competing with the fictions of Photoshop, has a dehumanizing effect on physical and mental levels. How can someone deal with being constantly dehumanized?
When they don't even realize it. We are bombarded by these images in social media and filters and all kinds of photoshopping, makeup, whatever it is, that people don't even look recognizably like they actually look in real life. And so it's giving this sense of a totally unrealistic sense of what is achievable. And again, it goes with that idea of that you are just the person you see in the mirror. And I hear from a lot of people, and by the way, I treat all adults, like, from 20s to 70s, men as well as women, and people are just saying, I'm not perfect. I have to be perfect. And this idea of perfection, and I think the movie Embrace really covered this very well, this idea of perfection is completely artificially created, and it's making us think that we have to look a way that we can't possibly look.
It's interesting because we have the Instagramification of our lives, where we do have these filters, and it makes us look more like a Barbie doll, or it makes us, or you can even, there are apps where you can, age yourself up, age yourself down, and people don't realize that they're more than just a body.
Oh, yes. I think I might have talked with you about this when you were on my show, but I had a patient once, and she called herself the queen of self-care, and she couldn't understand why she was so depressed and unhappy because she was taking such good care of herself, and she'd heard me talk and say that the key to feeling better about yourself is the way that you relate to yourself and the way you respond, and that self-care really is the key to all relationships, your relationship to yourself, which then affects your relationship to others, because if you're taking good care of yourself, you're not going to allow someone who's going to be mean to you. You're going to insist on someone who's nice to you. So I said, well, what do you mean you're the queen of self-care? Your Highness, please advise.
Right.
And she's like, well, I get mani-pedis, and I get facials, and I get, she did every possible thing. She got her hair blown out, got extensions on her eyelashes. And she's like, I take such good care of myself. Why am I unhappy?
But she's not dealing with the emotional stuff at all.
I said, that's not self-care. Exactly. That's grooming. And she just looked, I said, that's not the self I'm talking about. And she looks at me and she goes like, well, what other self is there? She literally had no other idea that there was a person of value within the person she saw in the mirror. Now, that's an extreme example, but it's not as extreme as you might think.
Well, going back to extreme examples, as far as the modeling industry and these young girls coming into, stardom and fame and getting paid hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. My question is, basically, is it the chicken or the egg that came first? Was modeling the career that set them off, or, were they like that beforehand? I read an article in the Washington Post that was written by a model that had experienced severe depression and anxiety disorders. And one of her quotes was, knowing that I had always been fragile, an overly sensitive child turned mercurial teen, my parents, in hindsight, shouldn't have let me model. But none of us knew what to expect. I think my parents saw modeling as a rare opportunity too good to pass up. So she feels like she already had a tendency maybe for depression, but can a career kick off that? Can a career be a catalyst to depression and anxiety if you don't have it in the first place?
I think that whatever it is, whether you develop depression, anxiety, an eating disorder, a drug problem, some kind of very deleterious self-abusive relationship to yourself, that there is some interplay of nature and nurture. There's who you just naturally are, and she, in that article, said that she was a certain kind of fragile person. There's the interplay of who you are with the environment. So you can have 10 models, and they're going to be affected by the circumstances of modeling in 10 different ways, depending on where they come from and how they handle things like conflict or pressure or all of that. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer to that. It's just kind of knowing yourself and maybe thinking about why you're modeling.
So a career can actually be a catalyst to something that you haven't experienced before.
I would say that that nature loads the gun, and the industry pulls the trigger.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up with the models, because like Tyron and Judy and I were discussing, is that the designers have their own issues too. For a long time, very creative people have been stereotyped as being mentally ill, that the more creative or the more genius you were, the more likely you were to be mentally ill. Is there any truth to that whatsoever?
No.
Well, there you go.
No. I think that
I mean, people think we're nuts, but besides that.
Well,
right.
what you're saying is something called mentally ill that might just be flamboyant or intense, and it also depends on who's watching you. Like my parents are both college professors, and I was born in this very academic, intellectual household, and I came out, yes, I am academic and intellectual, but my style is not like the quiet kid that was going to read books all weekend. Mm-hmm. I was like, hey, and I was always being told, like, you're too loud, you're too sensitive, you're too much. This is why I developed an eating disorder, actually. Mm-hmm. You know, that too much, you're too much became, I'm literally too much. So if I had been in a different family, I wouldn't have been considered too much. And so a lot has to do with, well, who's applying the label? Because somebody could say, wow, you're just over the top, or you can go to Italy and fit right in.
It's true, and the labels are always influenced by culture.
Yes.
I'm a believer that there's no singular causality, really, that we have little causation bubbles. That you have your culture, you have your parents, you have their beliefs, you have the times that you're living in, the zeitgeist. I mean, in all honesty, in my own life, I tell people I'm a Peter Paul Rubens painting come to life. That's what I look like. That's what I walk through in the world. And if I'd been living back in his time, I'd be considered sexier. But you have to deal with all of those circumstances and negotiate all of those circumstances. Now, I want the physicality, though, of and you opened up about having suffered with eating disorder issues yourself. I know I've done punitive diets in the past to try and fit that ideal, and I'm the worst dieter on the planet. I know that when I was doing that, I was not all right in the head. I mean, I get, to quote Danny Trejo, I get hangry. I mean, I get, when I am too hungry, I get really angry. Can starvation affect mental health if you are really cutting those calories? Because I imagine that the models, just the stress of not eating can just make someone be crazy.
You cannot think. I don't know whether it can make someone crazy, but in the cases of some kinds of anorexia, when you starve your brain, you cannot think, you cannot reason, you cannot have cognitive abilities. So whether that's crazy or not, I'm not sure, but you definitely lose yourself and lose your ability to be your best self when you're starving your brain, and that's why you see people who just get into it's almost like a psychotic state with anorexia, because their brains are so starved that they can't feed their minds. They can't think. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, because I think of my life, and some of the worst decisions I've ever made, I've been at my thinnest. I mean, I probably make some abysmal decisions now anyway. But seriously, some of the ones that have kind of echoed over the years, I made when I was really pushing myself to be something that I was not. Now, also I want to talk a little bit about body dysmorphia. Could you elucidate what that is and how it can play out in the fashion community and the entertainment community?
It's used in a way that is not exactly what it is, because as a clinical diagnosis, it would be like someone looks in the mirror and has normal features, and yet sees themselves as. Have you ever been to Disneyland and they have those mirrors that totally distort you? Mm-hmm. So they literally will see themselves in a grossly distorted way, and it's a very serious condition, and it causes people just total heartbreak. But it's become this sort of like, oh, I've got body dysmorphia, I think I'm fat, and it's kind of like saying, oh, the weather's bipolar, this sort of minimization of something serious.
Right.
But what it really is it's about a really egregious distortion, an inability to see yourself as you are. Anorexia might be a form of, for some people, of body dysmorphia. The people who cannot see themselves as emaciated, they just can't.
So what do you do with someone like that? I've always wondered. I know Tyrone told a story once where somebody told me the story where they were going to the gym and they saw this woman and they wanted to say something and she kept, getting thinner and thinner. Is there anything we can do in that type of situation?
Really, that's the saddest thing, because there's so much denial in the person, and they will tell you and mean it that you're crazy, you just want them to gain weight, whatever. But what they need to do is get into a hospital or an intensive eating disorder program and be fed, so that they can get to the point where they can think. And when they get to the point where they can think, maybe then they can do therapy. But you can't do therapy with someone who's in that state, and they are just caught up in this psychosis and thinking that they're fat when they're dying.
And how is that what happened to you?
Oh, I went through no, I didn't get that far, but I would go through all eating disorders. I would go on diets and starve myself, and then I'd become bulimic, and then I'd binge eat, and I just would be in this cycle of eating disorders, one after another. But again, I thought it was about food. It was never, and it never is about food. It's about some kind of way of trying to help yourself or express something in a very negative and dangerous way.
And that must be exactly what Food for Thought, your Amazon best-selling book, covers.
Nice segue. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just thought, oh my gosh, that's what a great title. And I would love to go on and on here. I feel like our show sometimes is too short for topics like this that really need the awareness and is such a passionate, relevant topic. But we do have to close eventually. So where can we get a hold of you? And let us know about your social, your everything that you're doing.
Yes, you can find me on winthedietwar.com, and through that you can get access to my online program, my video series, everything I do, my radio series, everything that I do is available at winthedietwar.com, including a link to Amazon, or you could just go on Amazon and look up Food for Thought, Dr. Nina.
Well, I just want to say I want to appreciate how candid you've been with your own issues. Sometimes people come on the show and they're great experts, but it's always great to hear the personal side of it and the perspective from someone who's actually been through it. Not only helping people, but you've experienced what a lot of people are going through. So it's just wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you. Well, this way, when I tell people there is hope, they know that I really know there is hope, and they believe me. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story.
Absolutely. It was great to have you. And next week, we have Leslie Zemeckis coming on the show, wife of Robert Zemeckis, who directed the iconic movies like Romancing the Stone, Back to the Future. She's coming out with her own movie, Mabel Tiger Trainer. Now, this is a story about the first female tiger trainer, and it's going to be fascinating. And Ellen Wood, who is the author of Joy, Joy, Joy. What a powerful show. And remember, subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't miss even one show. Go to whatwomenwantradio.com for more information, and we'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.